Happy to have you all here. It is a beautiful Monday. Super excited for this day. We have the very amazing Dirk Devis joining us, and I am super excited for this. Dirk is one of the most amazing humans on the planet. Super grateful to have met him in Bali. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Good morning, Dirk. Good morning, good morning. We've got several people joining us this morning. Everyone's just now coming in. And Dirk, it is not morning for you.
No, it isn't.
It is your almost middle of the night, right? Is it midnight for you?
No, not really. It's 7 o'clock in the evening.
11 o'clock?
7 o'clock.
7. Okay, not so bad.
Not too bad, not too bad. If it comes from the Australian side, then it's midnight.
Right, okay.
From the States side, it's better.
Good. So I am actually going to kind of just lay the ground rules again for those of you that are just joining us. Magnificent Monday for the first time ever. Mel, welcome. Good morning. So because we have so many people joining our Magnificent Monday calls now, which I'm super excited about, love building this community of conscious educators around the planet. If you want to come on and participate on video, go ahead and do the hand raise, and I will invite you in so that you can have your video on with us. If you don't and you just want to listen in, then don't raise your hand, but you can chat with us in the chat box and we'll see any of your questions or comments in there. And I'll do my best to include them in the conversation if you don't want to join us on video. But if you do, go ahead and raise your hand right now and I will bring you on to video with us all. So with that housekeeping, Audrey, good morning. I'm going to try to multitask and talk and bring people in at the same time. Mel, I'm going to make you co-host. So then that way you can, if anyone raises their hand, you can bring them in. Just click next to their name and the little 3 buttons and click promote to panelists. Good morning, Audra. Or good evening. I keep leaving Dirk out of the conversation. I can't leave Dirk out today. It's still Monday for Dirk though, right?
Yeah.
As long as it's still Monday, that's all that matters. Because once we're back into a physical school environment, we'll probably shift the time of these, which may make it Tuesdays for some of our friends around the world. And we'll just call it Magnificent Monday, Happy Tuesday. We'll shift it a little bit. So again, if anyone wants to join us on video, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you on video with us. So today is all about Dirk, and he's going to say, no, it's not. It's all about everyone else. But I wanted to do a quick little introduction of Dirk and how he and I met, and then we'll get into our gratitude and get into our conversation. So Dirk and I met in Bali. I was training with the Genius School Global team. I was doing a certified genius educator training. And Dirk walked in and I just remember his energy. And when he comes into a room, he just has this presence of calm and centered and openness. And he was just the person that was so open to learning, so open to growing, no matter what it was about. He didn't come in as the know-it-all, didn't come in as anything else. So as he and I have been talking, has it been a year yet, Dirk?
Close to
a year. And so as he and I have connected throughout the year, and I've learned more about his work with self-enablement, and he was like, hey, I'm happy to volunteer some content for Magnificent Mondays. No pressure, no anything, but I just want to be part of the community, and how can I contribute? And I said, absolutely. So looking more into his work, he is just so brilliant and has spent so much time and energy really and true to his profile as an accumulator lord. He leans steel, but definitely has the tempo energy that gives him that grounding. Just has so much robust wisdom when it comes to self-enablement. And it was one of the things that I even asked him, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, was why not self-empowerment? And so he'll be able to answer that question too as we go along. So with that, welcome, Dirk. And if you want to start our gratitude off, what micro moment are you grateful for from this weekend that happened for you?
for this weekend it happened. My micro moment of gratitude was actually to spend time on the work that I love doing in preparation
Yeah.
for this evening's or for today's presentation. It's just a matter of gathering together and then reflecting, reminiscing, remembering a few things along the way, and gives me also a re-energizing in terms of doing what I love to doing. And I'm here, I'm doing it now.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Mel, what's your gratitude? What's your micro moment? And everyone else, while we're talking about these, go ahead and type in the chat box and make sure it says to all panelists and attendees. Make sure you're chatting to all panelists and attendees. And go ahead and type in the chat your micro moments of gratitude from this weekend. And Mel, go ahead.
I'm going to Sedona in 3 days, and I paid myself first, and I saved my money, and I'm taking myself on a vacation. Love bucket checked off.
Check, check.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I am super excited to join you. Mel was going to, and Audra, if you can change to all panelists and attendees so that they can see your chats. Mel was like, oh my gosh, I booked this trip. Want to join me? It's like love and self-care because Melissa teed it up for me. And I was like, I wouldn't research all of that and figure it all out. So find a buddy. If you are not one to necessarily research all of that and figure it all out for yourself, find someone who loves to do it. And I was talking to my sister last night and she reached out to a friend and she was like, I'm so overwhelmed. Like I have no time to do anything. And she goes, I really want to book a little place. She lives in Florida, a little place on the beach for a weekend. She goes, I just need to get away and stare at the ocean for 4 days. And her friend was like, I got you. I'll research it. Like, you don't have time for that? I'll research. That's fun. She was like, oh my God, really? You'll plan my vacation for me? She was like, yeah, reach out.
I think this goes perfect though into the topic today when we're discussing like, leveraging your possession, right? Like, the fortunate thing that Sandy and I have known each other for so many years, that Sandy leverages me all the time to book vacations for us. The where, the what, the time, the money, all of it. And she doesn't even ask me. So she leverages my position of strength because she knows she won't do it. So I think it's an exciting topic today because you get to see whether it's in personal or business, like when you leverage, people that are good in certain areas that it's just not your strong suit, life becomes so much more abundant when you relinquish that for sure.
Yeah, because it becomes fun too, especially for the person who goes, really? I get to do that? So it's good stuff. And yay, Ward, good luck on your job interview today. Oh, and Teresa, time to chat with your dad on his birthday. That's so awesome. So awesome. I am feeling a little guilty. If my brother is watching, I'm feeling guilty. For his birthday, I only sent him a text, which I feel like a really bad sister for. So kudos to you, Teresa, for chatting with your dad on his birthday. I'm a bad sister right now. I've got to make it up to him at some point this week. I was like so head down in building the Educator to Edupreneur program for the last 3 days. I feel like I haven't looked up, but I will today. Ryan, I will call you today. Audra, you want to share your gratitude? I know you typed it in as well.
Yeah, I actually was on a walk and I've been struggling. The thing that hits me the most is the pain from the walking and like the bloating and the hands swinging and oh my gosh. So I was like right in a moment where I was like, you could either turn right and I could head home early or I could keep going long loop with my family. And I was like so close and I was kind of like one of those moments where give me a sign.
Yeah.
And the turn was coming. All of a sudden this car pulls around and it's a friend who lives down the way and she gets up, she goes, oh my gosh, hi guys, I'm so proud of you. She comes straight to me, gives me a hug. I'm like, I'm sweaty, I'm sorry. She goes, it's okay. That's all I needed. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I asked her to sign. Yeah, it was great. So I needed that. And then she said, I'm so sorry. I just got out of the car. I thought I might scare you. I said, you don't realize what you did for me.
Oh, it's so fantastic. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Love it, love it. And the hands, you should message Melissa about the hands when you're walking for nutrients that you might be missing. it might be something super simple. So sorry, Mel, I'm offering you up. Love this. And thank you for the little nudge of a reminder for me that I did want to take a moment. Barbara, you you were part of a beautiful, peaceful protest last night and had a friend go with you. I do want us all to just take a moment and take a deep breath in and celebrate the fact that we have the ability as humans to come together and stand up for what's right. That we have the ability to leverage our love for humanity, to leverage our love and our passion for one another and for what's right for all humans, for all humanity, that Black lives do matter, that all lives matter as well, but this is about the Black community and what they have gone through and that they are having to fight, and to honor that. And so I just want us all to take a moment and feel grateful that we can come together and that we can do that. I mean, it's so huge that we have that passion and that drive as human beings to really make a difference. And, you know, a lot of people say fight for what's right. And I want to shift that word. I want to take the energy of fight out of it and just go stand up and use your voice for what is right. And as conscious educators, that's what you all do on a daily basis. And I want to nudge and encourage each one of you to really look at, as I've been doing, look at my own unconscious biases that I've had and little things that I may have said unintentionally, unconsciously, truly from a place where it was love for me, but obviously potentially didn't land that way. So really looking inward and getting curious with yourself on how we can all do better. How can we all be more aware of our unconscious biases across the board? How can we all be more conscious? That's what this conscious educator movement is about, is how can we not only serve our students, but also our communities and ourselves by being more aware and being more conscious about everything and how we show up. So Barbara, thank you for that nudge of a reminder and for going to that beautiful, peaceful protest. So thank you all for joining in this conversation. And again, quick nudge, if anyone wants to come on video, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you on. And Pottery Studio Sienna is reopened. Yay! Yay, yay. And Adrian, I missed the seminar, the NASA seminar. Is that what you're talking about? I missed. Yeah, Adrian is asking, am I speaking at the seminar? I am speaking at the NASA seminar. The Nevada Association of School Administrators, they have a virtual conference that's happening over the next 3 days, and I'm speaking on Wednesday. So Wednesday afternoon, Kendall and I are rounding out the whole thing. So we have is it 2.5 hours? 2.5 hours on Wednesday. So we're Wednesday, I think we start at 2:30. So yes, we'd love to see you there, Adrian. Welcome, Teresa. Welcome on the video. Hi. So Teresa, anything else on gratitude that you wanted to add before we move forward?
I think this morning being able to paint a fence, or not a fence, it's a panel that I didn't want to paint because our HOA didn't like it. And actually just being able to get through doing it before my back gave out, which now it has. So now I rest. Well,
yes, listen to your body. Definitely listen to your body.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so we are gonna get started. And again, make sure that you're chatting to all panelists and attendees. Just click on the blue little box and it'll give you choices of who you're chatting to. Make sure it's all panelists and attendees because Barbara couldn't see word what you wrote. So Dirk, with that, I know you have some fabulous nuggets of wisdom to share with us. And so let's start with why self-enablement, why that word enablement, because I loved the way that you described this to me. Why enablement versus empowerment or any other word?
Well, let me just say the reason why I chose the word enablement, because enablement is about getting the ability, obtaining the ability with somehow, with someone, with something to actually achieve something. While the word empowerment is more about giving the authority or the power to actually do something. Okay, so what I'm actually more is how can I actually be more enabled than empowered? Because enabled is to bring something out and to do something with it. Now, in order for that, let me just get into my presentation. So I'm going to share a screen, if that's okay. There we are. Okay, let me get into the, there we are. All right. Yeah. So what out just for myself, I just want to actually put in my, okay, that's right, that's okay. What I'd like to actually continue on is actually to say thank you, Sandy, for the opportunity to actually be able to share a little bit of what I've been quite passionate about, is actually the concept of self-enablement. And the topic of my presentation, really is about self-enablement for maximizing your success, or your flow for that matter, to be the being who you are truly meant to be. Okay. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in the following. Neil Donald Walsh actually mentioned in one of his webinars that our inherent life purpose is to experience the fullness of who we truly are, to rise to the highest expression of being that any moment actually that this entire lifetime will allow. Now, within the context of that, and also given that our current social structures of enablement to become who we are meant to be might not longer be as available or no longer fit for purpose by our ever-changing society. Like, for example, the pandemic that has coming through. Things really are getting mixed up because of that. So where could we, are we still having those trusted old social structures to get enabled from? They might not be that available anymore or not easily accessible. So the question I have now, where else could we now look for in the provision of enablement? Anyone to respond? What about the wisdom? What about the wisdom of our ever-present higher self, also known as our authentic self, to self-enable with?
Yeah, I love it, Dirk. It's so important that we really look within ourselves. It's like when we were talking about trust a few weeks back, and understanding we can look for trust outside of us, but if it doesn't start within, then we're missing the foundational piece.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking as well. Now, anyway, as the way I go about it, maybe because being a steel or a Lord personality, I always like to go out with proper definitions. So I really know what I'm talking about when I use certain terms and words. So let's first have a look at the definition of enablement. As I've mentioned, it's providing with the ability or means to do something to make it possible, right? What is success? Success, the accomplishment of or an aim or a purpose. And I did mention the word being. What is the being? According to the Oxford Dictionary, is the nature of essence of a person or the intrinsic nature. So what I'm talking about here is about providing the ability or means to do something to make it possible, the accomplishment or aim of purpose with regards to bringing forth the best of our essence, of our intrinsic nature in whatever we do. Okay, so that's the whole basis of the self-enablement concept I'm trying to bring forth.
Dirk, where did this come from? When you first started this work, what was the spark of that?
The spark of that, wow. Okay, very quickly, I've been a consciousness coach for quite a while, about 10 years and so on. And I was quite active in the corporate environment till about 5 years ago in the petrochemical industry. And I was there as a management and leadership coach to middle and senior management. Then life happens, rearrangement, streamlining of the organization. My environment that I was working in certainly didn't exist anymore. So I decided maybe it's time for me to go out and follow my passion privately. So I started my own business called Frontier Coaching. Moved over to Cape Town as well at that stage. However, because of circumstances and the way Providence maybe brings it to me, I really couldn't get going within the market. And because of that, I felt, well, not getting into the market, into the clients, what else can I do to serve the community? So the good old saying that if Mohammed does not come to the mountain, let the mountain go to Mohammed. So I decided, what can I write? What can I do in order to actually do a bit of self-coaching? How can I promote self-coaching instead of being a coach? Instead of using a coach, because after all, in a non-affluent society like South Africa, it's quite pricey to have a coach. So I decided to write a guide or a manual on self-coaching, which I subsequently changed to self-enablement, but it's still within a coaching format. Okay. So that actually came through for me to bring something to the community that is affordable, easy to get, and still are able to enable or coach themselves, enables them to do what they truly meant to be. Also, I've got quite a spiritual sort of tracking purpose in mind as well. So it's all about getting through to your higher self, because as Neil Donald once says, it's to bring the best in you out. That's what has to happen. So that came out my work on self-enablement to success.
I love it. I love it. Love it. And, you know, the fact that you took that journey, and you would think coming from a space of being in the petrochemical industry to land in this world of consciousness and self-enablement would be like worlds apart. And yet that emergence and the journey of your career, and that, like I said, one of the things that I admire most about you is your constant quest for learning and that openness. So this is beautiful. I love it.
So thank you. So I think where we're standing now is the remaining question now is, who is this self to self-enable with now? So I now need to dive into this. Now, I just need to share the following before I continue, is that my wife, Lorna, she has a creator profile. Okay, that means that
she drives you crazy.
Over and above that, yes. You know, she constantly reminds me, whatever I present, please get to the point, keep it simple, and make it short. Okay. All right. So for all the creators out there, to stick to the point, we're not going off to a tangent. I have got some slides that I'm going to walk through, and that's going to be the best way for me to getting through this information in the fastest possible time. So bear with me when I walk through the slides, okay? All right. Okay. What I'd like to share with you is something that I've always used as a start off in my coaching practice, is to become aware of this traveling companion called the ego. Okay. In one's life journey, we acquire a traveling companion who is our own ego. In effect, it's our sense of self, or in short, our own self, which is reflected by our state of mind. Okay. So this companion appears in our early childhood by a process of personalization that is construed according to genetic and hereditary related factors from the internal side, but also the norms of society managed by the good intentions of our parents, teachers, and influences within our community, which comes to the point of culture. This is the way we do things around here. And we're getting domesticated, if I may say this word, into that culture from the very first, as a sibling, as a scholar, wherever we go, even in adult life, we always saying this is the way we are doing things around here. Eventually, this companion takes over a sense of identity in the form of a personality. It actually starts creating our own personality. Subsequently, our ego imposes on us a sense of who we are, right? And who we are not, how we have to see ourselves, the roles we have to play, etc. However, this ego is not you. It is simply an adopted sense of self, who in generally overshadows one's essential beingness, who was there from the day one was conceived. So without an overshadowing ego, we have freedom to simply be, with no limitations of who we think and feel we are or are not. Okay. So if our sense of who we are is primarily focused on and driven by the importance of self-interest, such a disposition of self can be viewed as being egocentric. Conversely, if our sense of self, who we are, is not primarily focused on and driven by the importance of self-interest, such a disposition of self can be viewed as being non-egocentric. Now, an egocentric person has an inherent sense of separation from the community he or she lives in order to protect his position and to survive within the community. And therefore, there is a need to command and control, protecting the exclusive me or the shared us as an exclusive club. Having conditional relationships in the form of bartering, I will do this for you if you do this for me, operates primarily from reason and emotion as thinking and contracted feeling, i.e. from personal power. Always wants to be right, and always wants to be right and to look good. Hence, the others must be wrong and look bad. As a matter of fact, at the extreme of egocentricity, such a person can actually be very callous indeed to the outsiders of his exclusive club, unfortunately. But then we also now have the other side of the continuum, which is the non-egocentric person. And he has an inherent sense of oneness versus the sense of separateness. He has a sense of oneness with the community he or she lives in. And this leads to an appreciation and trust, as well as a surrender in the awareness of his or her essential beingness. Being inclusive, expressed as we within the community, having relationships based on unconditional acceptance. Operates primarily from intuition, expressed as an inherent knowing and its associated inspiration, as well as an inherent feeling regarding what to do or not to do for the betterment of all, and actually is tapping or operating from universal power. And above all, over and above all, does attract synchronistic circumstances and auspicious occurrences that support him or her in the best possible way. And I think that is the greatest benefit from a non-egocentric position. For a non-egocentric person, the ego is normalized. Remember, you must realize we don't need to kill the ego. The ego has a very important role to play, okay? But has to be normalized. And for a non-egocentric person, the ego is normalized to its basic and inherent, meant to be interface role in this world. But now has become transparent to the presence of his or her essential beingness. So the sense of self is then experienced as a true and authentic self and expressed as such to the community. Which now brings me to the question, do I own and manage this traveling companion, or does it own and manage me? I'll leave you with that question. Okay. Right. The next question, or follow-up to that, is that regarding one's self-enablement journey, who will be in effect doing the self-enablement? Okay. We now have the two sides, the two sides of the continuum. The one is the egocentric one. And at extreme, I'm thinking people like Genghis Khan, Hitler, I'm thinking like people of Saddam Hussein. I'm thinking like Mugabe, if I may say so. There might even some current leaders that might be considered as totally egocentric. But then we have the non-egocentric persons, and I'm thinking by the people like St. Francis of Assisi. I'm thinking about Mother Teresa. I'm thinking about Madiba, our South African First Minister. So there you can definitely see there's definitely a continuum. So who will now be the best self-to-self enablement with? So with reference to the constitution of an egocentric disposition versus a non-egocentric disposition, the journey towards success will best be served by one's sense of self having a non-egocentric position. Why would I say that? The reason I would say that is because a more non-biased and as such a more honest self-enablement experience can be realized. So this is important, that if you go for self-enablement, and that's why I'm saying with a capital S, always make sure, or trying to perceive it, that you are operating from your higher self, your authentic self. Because then what comes out of your enablement exercise will be true to what the universe really wants you to do. Okay.
Dirk, do you have an example of how that's worked for you or any of your clients when you've seen them try to go down a self-enablement route from an egocentric place until they got to that authenticity and were in that self-enablement through a non-egocentric place and through their highest self? Can you share like the difference between those, an example?
Well, if you look at a person which is totally egocentric, I basically have seen persons that I said I am enabling myself, but not coming from the right source, eventually end up in a bigger mess than they were before they started, because it starts backfiring on them. Mm-hmm. They don't get things right. They think they're getting right, but then eventually the balances of nature, it basically comes back to them. Mm. And so, and they're not really getting what they really want to do.
So, Audrey, you have a couple questions. Do you want to speak to those versus me reading for you?
Yeah, and sometimes my computer has a glitch, but my first question was the term enablement. A lot of people see that as a negative connotation. But it doesn't mean that it is. I think people will attribute negative connotations to almost anything, but it ties into my second question. But the idea of enablement, like when you're an enabler or to enable something to happen, is as if like you're letting it happen or giving power to something to kind of, I mean, I think the idea of the ego having, reign over, like whether or not we can have some sense of control to it. How do you respond to people who might associate enablement as being a negative?
I basically just go back to my definition. What is enablement? And the way it's been defined in the dictionaries in general, in the English language, is basically to basically obtain the ability to make something happen. Okay, so if it comes from within, it then becomes self-enablement. I don't think there's anything wrong with enablement coming from, say, I see something there, like I want to go through a specific area of place, and I found some enablement for me to get there from an outside agent. That is nothing wrong with that. So it's just a matter of having to look at a definition, and I've basically always seen it as a positive thing. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and see, that kind of coincides with my second question, which is, it's so funny. I had a professor who met Mother Teresa, and he said she was very nice to him. But I think there's a perception. It doesn't mean that that's true. I mean, he wasn't the greatest guy either. I think we all have our moments. But this idea of the ego and the kind of ego you have to be a leader, whether it's perceived as being ego, like self-centered of sort, or maybe I'm not saying it correctly according to the way you're describing it, but something to the effect of that this kind of personality goes with the territory. Like, in other words, you kind of get a little bit of each side. You kind of have to take the good with the bad. What do you say to that?
Well, in terms of the ego, you know, we all have a range in terms of how we operate within an egocentric situation. I actually want to see it as a normal curve distribution. There is a specific point where you most probably will gravitate to most of the time in terms of your expression of your ego. Because as I said, we all have an ego, and we're not all Mother Teresa's, we're not all Medivas, we're not all that. So we do have a range. We have moments that we can be very egocentric, and yet we have moments that we are we're non-egocentric. But there is a bit of a normal distribution saying, where's the apex? Where's the gravitational? You will find that either on a scale between full non-egocentricity to egocentricity, it somewhere sits in a specific place. So yes, you have moments of both sides that you can go negative or positive, but we all have a gravitation point, which I start calling a locus of being. Okay, so where is our locus of being? It's somewhere between the ego. But then as we progress, as we evolve in life, and maybe also through some coaching, you will find that our locus of being starts to rise, or should be hopefully rising to a more non-egocentric situation or positioning. And that is where we can, and that's where I, as a consciousness coach, are really aiming at. I have a view, I'm going to have a perception of where is this person's locus of being. How can I, through coaching, not by telling, but through coaching, how can I have him to realize there is a better way for him to be, to the betterment of all? And by actually going the higher level of going to a more non-egocentric locus of being, he will start to realize what nature gives back, or what the universe gives back. The synchronicities, the auspicious conditions in terms of supporting you further and further on that journey.
So do you show them how to reach that, or how do they, are they self-assessing, or do you guide them?
Using a coaching practice is that basically is just to asking the appropriate questions to start to realize where are they, what is the isness of their life. Okay, and then yes, if it needs be, what I do come up with some suggestions. I come up with some sharing of what has happened within my life or some other's life, and it's for them basically just to actually take it on and pursue this further. As coaching goes, you know, the whole purpose for me as a consciousness coach is to just create a, shall I call it, a specific space, a context, a space, a paradigm for them to think differently, to think out of the box, to experience things differently.
So would you agree that it's this sense of, sorry, I'm not trying to dominate, just really interesting. Would you say that there's, that it's an awareness, that the first step is this awareness that you're bringing them to, and where they kind of settle themselves out to, that's the path?
There is. You have to obviously start with an essential awareness of a seeker. Okay. And that is because you might have in the range, you might find that your total range of non-egocentricity to egocentricity is that if you're totally or very low on, or very down into the non-egocentricity, there's no awareness to move on. Okay, now nature has a good way of somehow getting these persons involved by bringing in a pandemic or a social crisis or a personal crisis. So by force, they're starting to think, hang on, what's happening here? Why am I here? What is? Maybe there's something else. So by force, they're getting into from an unconscious unconscious egocentricity to a conscious egocentricity, because they start becoming to think. And from that purpose onwards, through self-enablement, through coaching, you now become from a conscious egocentricity to from a conscious egocentric person to a conscious non-egocentric person. So there is a movement through that. The first half, the first bit is by force, and the second bit is by choice.
So Dirk, would you say that, I love these success points right here. And Audra, when you were saying, is there like an assessment? It's almost as if these points are the assessment, right? Is to be able to have that conversation with the person that you're coaching, the person you're connecting with, the person that you're helping, whether it's yourself or someone else, to really find that self-enablement and find where the barometer of success is to, are you 100% sure of wanting your objective, and to go through these success points, right? Is that, Dirk, am I reading that right? Is that this kind of becomes the metrics for success?
These are what I call qualities, enabling qualities that we all inherently have, but that we need to start tapping into it. Okay, so in my coaching practice, in the coaching practice towards self-enablement, I'm trying to leverage these qualities more and more. So if I can just go through them very quickly. First of all, if a person wants to actually achieve something in terms from within himself, obviously there's an objective in mind. I want to experience or reach or get something. So my first question is, am I successful by being 100% sure of wanting my objective? This isn't, you have to be 100% sure, because out of that comes the clarity as well as the commitment and determination to do something. If you're not 100% sure that is what you want, it will not bring you the required commitment and determination to get through. Then if you want to move on, you have to be passionate about my objective. You've got to be passionate about this. Because why passion? Passion is the source of energy to move you along towards according to your commitment and your determination. You also have to be affirmative regarding my objective. Basically, you have to clearly state or verbalize and state in terms of space and time, meaning starting with a specific active verb that I will, I shall, I am, then the detail what it is you want to do within a certain time frame. The reason that you have to be very clear about this, because the universe or providence is always there to listen. And the clearly you state what you want to happen, the more easy it is to respond to it. It also internally has bring in a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you think about something, the more you have that state of mind about what I strongly want by stating it in such a way, the more self-fulfilling prophecy will come through. Okay. But then once you've said it, once you've stated and worded, you know, you've got to be in integrity regarding your objective. And the integrity I'm talking about is to do what you said you would do by when you said you would do it. Because the more, if you are in integrity with your affirmation, the more you will actually start experiencing the answers or the whatever is needed for you to get to the answer or to reach the objective will come to you. It will flow to you. And yet at the same time, paradoxically, you've got to be detached from the expectation. because we are rather talking about the intent, which is open-minded. It is open-ended, where expectation is very much precast in concrete. Because that's what you're seeking. You might have an expectation, or that might not be the perfect thing you want for you to get. So rather, by not being detached to the expectation, you open yourself to maybe even get something better as what you originally was thinking of. You've got to be present in realizing your objective, meaning you've got to be there where things are happening in order to positively impact the life situation there. It doesn't happen that you are absent-minded or what else. You've got to be there. But at the same time, you have to be consciously receptive. If your mind is full with preconceived ideas and thoughts and triggers this and triggers that, whatever shows up for you will not get into it because you are too busy. So you have to be basically open-minded by actually living more simplistically, living, chucking out all the stuff that is not needed within you, so you can actually be making space for that which the universe wants to give you, to bring it into you. So be present, i.e. being open-minded, okay, and receptive. Being present means being sort of mindfulness. I'm relating presence with mindfulness, and yet consciously receptive means being open-minded as well. So these are the enabling qualities that if we can activate those or enable them, then it actually supports you well in the journey of self-enablement. Shall I continue? Because I'm mindful of time.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at any point in time, wanting to successfully realize an intent in mind through self-enablement, one needs to process the following 5 steps. And this is my 5-step formula to success, which I'm always trying to bring forth. First of all, whatever you do, you've got to pause. While pausing, so that you can get a stillness of mind. Basically, pause from the continuation and the business what you're doing. Just pause. Take a breather. And you actually do that by breathing. Okay. Take a pause. Once you've paused, have stillness of mind, connect with your higher self, your authentic self. And there's a way of doing that as well. Just to connect, in order to become centered in what it is and have the right mind space for whatever it is that you need to, from within, realize what needs to be done. Then you go, from that mind space, you go into the reflection mode. There where you're reflecting, guided by a specific set of root questions, or whatever you choose to reflect, the means you want to reflect by. Just reflect through that in order to come to a point where you can choose, after you have clarity through reflection, come to a point where you can choose, what is it, what action can I now take? Okay. And once you've taken that action, once you've chosen the action, then you do continue with an attitude of gratitude, because knowing it comes from the right place, from the higher plane, from your right place it comes in, you've chosen to formulate it within an action. By continuing in gratitude, you will find all sorts of circumstances and synchronicities coming into play to support you to continue to the best possible way. And the beauty is that you can do that anytime. Anytime. It can take you 10 minutes to go pause, connect, reflect, choose, continue. Or if it's quite complex you want to deal with, it can take you an hour by yourself just to go through. But it can go quick. It all depends what you want to deal with, how you want to deal with this.
Love it, Dirk. And Barbara has a great question. Can you give examples of reflect? You mentioned guiding questions.
Yes, I can. As a matter of fact, what I would love to do now, with your permission, I actually would like you, in order for you to experience it all, okay, I would love now to take you, to guide you through a process of self-enablement, where I will using a specific set of reflective questions, okay. And then for you to experience is what I'm talking about. I've got a few sets of reflective questions, but this one specifically I want to use if you have a specific issue, a current or imminent issue that you have in mind that you need to deal with. Okay. That could like be a procrastination. We're all procrastinating, are we? So procrastination that you need to really get attention to, you want to do it. So it could be a procrastination or any sort of activity that you are battling with to actually want to do. So in my invitation, okay, I would like you to already think, as we're going to go through this, each individually, what is an issue that I actually want to resolve? And let's see if the self-enablement process of pause, connect, reflect, and choose will give me to some sort of an answer. If that's okay,
Yes.
shall I continue
yes,
this?
Absolutely.
Then you get a feel for it. All right. Okay. So I did ask you to just think of an issue that you feel you really would like to get to resolve. Okay. If possible, if maybe you have a piece of paper handy, just write that issue down, if you can, just for clarity's sake. All right. It's just a simple issue. It's nothing too complex, just something, but it's something that you are battling with. Okay, just have that in mind. All right. So if you're ready, and when we're ready, now let's begin. Okay. Good. We are all ready. Right. Let's now pause by closing your eyes and relax. Just focus on breathing slowly and deeply. And as you continue in your breathing, experience the stillness and quietness of just being in the now. Which is the presence of your higher self, your authentic self. Knowing that the relevant answers to your questions comes from within. Now gently bring to mind and observe the issue you want to resolve. What is the current situation regarding this issue? What is at risk with regards to the presence of the current situation? What prevents me from dealing with this issue? And what supports me to deal with this issue? What is really at the core regarding this issue? What do I have to acknowledge, let go of, and decide upon to deal with this issue? what needs to happen through me in order to deal with the situation. And what has to be in place by me in order to deal with the situation. So, what action am I now choosing to do? When and where will I do it? Who, if relevant, will I do it with? How will I do it? How determined am I to do this? And eventually, how will I benefit from doing this? And what remains now is to continue with my action with an attitude of gratitude. And that's my example.
That was beautiful, Dirk.
I hope some of you have got some answers to that issue. I trust some of them. It might not come now, but it might come later. And now, if I move on, may I move on?
Yeah, we've got just a couple minutes to close up. So
Okay.
if you just want to wrap up, and then I'll take it away with
Just a
our
quick
closing.
one-slide wrap-up from me.
Yeah,
Then
love it.
it is the following. This brings me now to the final question of this presentation. What is the potential use and benefit if self-enablement within the world of conscious education for the scholars and students with regards to establishing an internal locus of control, living one's core values, progressing through the levels of consciousness, enabling the hero's journey, personal branding, and above all, bringing forth self-reliance with self-expression. And I leave you as conscious educators just to ponder a bit on that. So,
Dirk, that was
any further
fantastic.
questions?
That was fantastic. Barbara is asking if it's possible for you to post some of those questions. If you can post them in the Conscious Educator Circle private group, that would be a great place to post them, maybe in the chat from where this has been streaming live on Facebook. If you just want to put a couple of those reflection questions in there for us, since we were all just so in the moment. That was so powerful. I want to hear from two of you. What was your takeaway from this conversation? So Audra, let's start with you. What was your takeaway from this conversation? And then the rest of you, if you want to type in the chat box, what are your takeaways?
I think I was really surprised that as much as I see this problem as something that I could deal with, that when brought to at that level where I was just kind of in a Zen moment, I wondered how much I was personally invested into it. It was funny to see like how much of investment, honestly, am I committing to that? And that took me by surprise. That was an aha moment. Considering, I mean, I talk about it all the time, and why isn't it more of a subconscious investment? if I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah.
A quick response to that, Andre. I think what shows out there is just by pausing and connecting to the right space of reflection and then doing these powerful questions through it, it comes out really what matters. And you will find most of the time, it's within me that's holding me back. It's not outside. It comes from within. And that's the beauty, that's the flowering, that's the self-enablement that is taking place.
Yeah, awesome. And Tammy is saying she really loved the process, and it unfolded perfectly. Just the transformational technique of the questions and the guiding through was super powerful. I totally agree. Anyone else want to type in the chat what your takeaway was? And Teresa, if you're still with us, if you want to unmute and share what your takeaway was. Yeah, and I see Jill on Facebook as well. Go ahead, Teresa.
I'm still seeing it. You know, it's like I have a lot of things played that I really need to sit and do this a little bit more and really figure out maybe the two things that I need to be focused on. And one of the things I wrote down when it was like, well, what's your issue? And it was just like, clean house, you know, and it's like, I have so many different things, and it's at a point now where if I want to move in 3 years and I want to go across to the Midwest with friends, I need to start like saying goodbye to all of the things that I really don't need anymore. You know, it's like one day I looked at my house and I said, I haven't bought anything that furnishes this house except the TV. Nothing else I bought in that house is something that I bought. And that's because my family has always just like, oh, you need this, here you go. Now it's looking at it and saying, is that really what I want? And maybe it's time to let some of that go. And maybe that's just age, but that's a big deal for me right now. It's just kind of like whittling it down to where I want to be able to move and have 10 boxes per room, which I know is going to be a huge thing to do. But that's kind of what came to mind one day.
Mm. Yeah.
Love it.
I actually was planning anyway to gift this whole guide from the pausing, the connecting, the reflection, and the actual choosing. Actually, it's I've got it already on a PDF, so I would like to send it to you, Sandy, for distribution for the people that have been part of it. It's my gift. It's my gift because it is a very powerful thing.
I so appreciate that, Dirk. That's amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure any one of us would love if you ever record an audio version of your voice taking us through it. So beautiful, so soothing. The pace, your cadence, your tone, your accent, everything just allows that 3-minute process, I think it was, to guide us through to get there that quickly. So whenever you record an audio version, I'm sure we would all be interested in listening to it often.
Do that.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that would be brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant. And Tammy's saying yes, yes, yes. And Audra's saying the same thing. So I am so eternally grateful to you, Dirk, for bringing this topic to us and really taking us through the process for us to feel it and experience it and understand the logic and the science behind it and the nuances of words and how they really play into things. It's so important that we are mindful of our words, not only in the context of what's going on within our societies, but also in our daily language and our interactions with everyone else as human beings. If we are mindful of the power of our words, then we grow our consciousness. So really be mindful whether you're using the word enablement, because it does have that double meaning. There's a lot of words that can be used that way. So use it with intention. As Dirk does, is he says self-enablement. He doesn't say go enable someone to have bad behavior. He says self-enablement. And so really understanding the power of those two words together is what gives it the depth of really what he means. And it goes back to when we talked about articulating our own individual core values, is that really say what you mean. So when I say I value gratitude, it means more when I say gratitude is the core of true happiness. That really gives depth to really what I mean by it. So understanding that it's okay to use more words. We can all slow down a little bit and take that extra second to add a word of kindness, to add that introspective space of pausing before we speak. So take the time to really lean in and love yourself first, because you're worth it. So your appreciation today, as we round out every Magnificent Monday, is for you to actually write down 3 things. And this was in our Conscious Educator Circle. It was, what are you celebrating about you? So this is all about Me Monday on this Magnificent Monday. So many M's. For you to take a moment and write down 3 things. So right now, before you move on to what's next, I want you to take out a piece of paper and write down 3 things that you are proud of about yourself. 3 things that you are proud of about yourself. And I want you to type them into the chat in Magnificent Monday, in the Conscious Educator Circle. So type them in, join us in that conversation, and then ask someone close to you to do the same thing. So tag a friend for them to do the same thing. It's important that we celebrate who we are. We are such givers. It starts with self-enablement. It starts with giving to ourselves and really leveraging that power that we have within us. So thank you, Dirk. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Have a magnificent day. See you all next week. Oh, next week, before we end, really quickly, I almost forgot. Next week, we're actually going to do a Conscious Educator Q&A and review. So next Magnificent Monday, we're going to do Conscious Educator Q&A and review. So type your questions into, just go ahead and leave them as comments or in the panel discussion in the Conscious Educator Circle, that group that we're all in, the Conscious Educator Circle on Facebook. Type your questions in there, or if you're not part of that group because you're not on Facebook, go ahead and then just email them to me or Melissa. But I would love your questions in there so that if anyone has the answers to those questions ahead of time, then you don't have to wait till next Monday. But otherwise, I'll kind of see some themes that are emerging, and we'll go through Q&As and do a review of the last 13 weeks that we've been together. So it'll be a really juicy, nugget-filled Monday. So I will see you all next Magnificent Monday. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.